In the last lesson, we wrote the program shown at the top of this slide. Let's review what it does. First, we turned on the motors, setting the control to unlimited so they'd continue to move until we told them otherwise. Then we entered a loop where we repeatedly played a sequence of 3 notes. We kept playing and playing those 3 notes until our ultrasonic sensor detected an object less than 25 centimeters away. At that point, the NXT stopped its motors and the NXT said object detected. Now, suppose we decided that the musical notes were just a bit too much. It can get annoying to listen to that same 3-note sequence again and again and again if we have to move for any length of time. Actually, that's pretty easy, right? We just need to delete these 3 blocks that play the sounds. So we can either click on one and push the delete key, or we could actually circle a couple of them. Let's see if I can do that. Oh, it's not working. All right, I'll just delete them one after the other. Delete. And then I'll click on this one and delete. And I guess I got to move my comments too. That's kind of tricky. Like, click on it. There we go. So wait until less than 25 centimeters and then say object detected. So here's our new program. And if you run it, it'll work well enough, but it looks a little bit weird to me, and maybe the code looks a bit weird to you too, because there's actually nothing going on inside the loop. It's empty. So a trace of this program is kind of weird. We start at the first block, where we hit that big Frankenstein power switch and start our motors running. And then we arrive at the loop, which says welcome, come in, but there's no blocks in the loop. So we reach the end of the loop where we check whether we detect an obstacle less than 25 centimeters away. Let's pretend that for a while we don't detect an obstacle. So we keep repeating this cycle, trying to do the contents of the loop, discovering there's no blocks in there, so checking the ultrasonic sensor, until finally we do detect an object less than 25 centimeters away. The loop tells us to go away, and so we move on to the next block, which tells us to stop the motors, and so we do. And finally, we reach the last block. The NXT announces that the object was detected, and our program's complete. So the NXT cleans up, making sure the motors and speakers are off, and the screen is reset. So it's nice that our program works, but it still seems kind of weird that in order to write this program, we need to have a loop with nothing in it. Now, while there's nothing technically wrong with having an empty loop in your program, the use of a loop kind of implies that you want to repeat something. And in this case, there's nothing we want to repeat. The good news is that there's a much better way to write this program. All right, so we're going to get rid of this loop block completely. I'm just going to click on it and then hit delete. And we're going to replace it with a wait block. So I'm going to click on this hourglass here. And remember, we've actually used a wait block before. We used a wait time block, and we used that to pause after we displayed a picture. But this time we're going to wait for the ultrasonic sensor. So let's just shove that in here. There we go. Okay. And we want to wait for the ultrasonic until, let's change it to centimeters and make it less than 25 centimeters. And let's get our comments so they line up again, waiting until less than 25 centimeters and saying object detected. Okay, let me download this. So let me just show you this program running so you believe it works. Great. Okay, let's trace this program now. It's a lot cleaner and simpler than our previous one. We start at the first block where we hit that big Frankenstein power switch and start our motors running. And now we get to our wait block. At the wait block, we keep checking and checking the reading from the ultrasonic sensor for as long as it takes until finally we detect an object less than 25 centimeters away. And so we move on to the next block. which tells us to stop the motors, so we do. And then we reach the last block. The NXT announces object detected, and our program's complete, so the NXT cleans up, making sure the motors and speakers are off and the screen is reset. Just like you can have a loop based on any of the sensors that come with your kit, and a lot more that you can buy separately, there's a wait block for all 4 of the sensors that you get in your kit. So we can change this program, so instead of waiting for the ultrasonic sensor to detect something close by, we could change it to wait for the touch sensor until it notices that the touch sensor's button's been pressed. And we can just change it on this. You'll also notice that on the wait block, they have the most common kinds of weights in here for all the different sensors that you get with your kit. But anyway, I just changed it here on this. I changed the sensor type to touch sensor. And notice that this is plugged into port 1, so I'll leave it there. I might as well, and I'll just make sure I plug my touch sensor into port 1. And I guess we're not waiting until less than 25 centimeters anymore. We're waiting until touched. So I'll just change that. Okay, so let me just take my touch sensor and plug that into a wire. And then I will find port 1 on my robot and just plug that in like that. Okay, so let's go. If you want to have your robot move until it bumps into something, it's just not very effective to mount a touch sensor somewhere on the robot and hope the robot lines up perfectly so you can just push this button when you bump into something. So most people build something a little bit more complicated like this so that there's a wide area that you can bump into, and wherever you bump into, that presses the button underneath. This particular design was built according to the directions in the manual that came with the educational kit. We could also change out this touch sensor here, and maybe why don't we, instead of waiting for a touch, let's wait for a loud sound. So let me click on that sensor, and we don't want the touch sensor anymore, we want the sound sensor. And it says we're going to wait until a sound is greater than 50. Remember, 0 is totally quiet, 100 is incredibly loud. I need to make sure that I plug in the sound sensor into port 2. Okay, so you can see I've attached the sound sensor to my robot and plugged it into port 2. If I just download this program, now, as long as my sound block is chosen, wait for sound, you can see down here the numbers are changing as I speak. It kind of looks like as I speak it's somewhere between 0 and I don't know, oh well, there was a 63, I was loud, but I think generally my spoken language is below 40, so I'm going to assume that if I wait until a sound is greater than 50, that'll be pretty loud if I'm trying to be quiet. So let's give it a shot.